My sister Celia's wedding invitation arrived on heavy, cream-colored paper that felt like money. I traced the embossed script with my thumb. Mr. and Mrs. Arthur Thorne request the honor of your presence at the marriage of their daughter, Celia Rose. The golden wax seal of the Thorne family crest was a bit much. Mom must have insisted. I dropped it on the kitchen counter. The sound was a dull thud in my empty apartment. 80 words in, and I already want to stop. But I promised my therapist I'd write this. All of it. The phone rang. It was Mom, of course. Did you get it? Her voice was breathless, a symphony of manufactured excitement. Isn't it exquisite? Arthur's mother knew a calligrapher in Vienna. And the venue. The Arboretum. In June. Can you imagine? I could. I could imagine the sprawling green, the peacocks, the string quartet, the champagne fountain. Celia had been planning this since she was 6. I got it, I said, my voice flat. A beat of silence. I could hear her recalibrating, shifting from giddy to concerned. The transition was seamless. You'll come, won't you, Ben? You have to. It's your sister. The subtext vibrated down the line. Don't you dare ruin this for her. Don't you dare ruin this for us. I have the invitation, Mom. I'll RSVP. A non-answer. She pounced on the uncertainty. What does that mean? Benjamin, this is family. The photographer needs numbers. The seating chart is a nightmare. I leaned against the counter, staring at the invitation like it was a live grenade. I said I'll RSVP. I need to check my work schedule. A lie. I'm a freelance graphic designer. Work schedule. The universal excuse for the disappointing child. She sighed, the sound heavy with martyrdom. Your father and I are paying for your flight. First class. And the hotel. The Marriott, right next to the Arboretum. We've booked you a suite. Translation. We are removing all obstacles so you have no excuse. We are buying your compliance. The old anger, a cold, hard stone settled in my gut. That's generous, Mom. It's nothing, she chirped, victory in her tone. We just want everyone together. For Celia. Always for Celia. The golden filament. After hanging up, I poured a whiskey. The silence of my apartment was a comfort. No demands, no performances. Just me and the memory of the last family togetherness. Christmas. Dad making his famous eggnog, smiling blandly. Mom fluttering, a nervous bird, ensuring Celia's presents were piled highest. Celia, holding court by the fire, detailing her promotion to VP of Marketing at 29. My gift, a carefully chosen first edition Vonnegut, was set aside with a polite, "Oh, you shouldn't have." The unspoken end of that sentence hung in the air. We have no use for this. I opened my laptop. My social media was a curated highlight reel, but Celia's was a royal broadcast. There she was, a blinding smile, her engagement ring catching the light like a prism. Hashtag Shasades, hashtag Thorny and Thorn, hashtag blessed. Arthur was handsome in a generic, clean-jawed way. He looked like he'd never had a thought that cost him sleep. The comments were a sea of heart emojis and perfect couple. I clicked away. My own profile was sparse, a few design shots, a picture of my dog, Sam, who died last year. A different kind of silence. The wedding was in 3 months. I marked it on my calendar in red. A warning. I tried to work, but my focus was shot. I kept thinking about the suit. I need a new one. Mom would inevitably comment on my bohemian style, suggest a tailor she knew. Celia would offer to have one of Arthur's suits altered for me. The generosity that stings. I decided then. I'd go. I'd wear my own damn suit. I'd smile. I'd clap. I'd be the ghost at the feast. The quiet, unremarkable brother. It was my role. RSVP card sent. Ben Miller, attending. No +1. Mom called within hours. No date, sweetheart. What about that nice girl from the coffee shop you mentioned? Sarah. I'd mentioned her once, 8 months ago. We're not together, Mom. Pity. Well, maybe you'll meet someone at the wedding. Arthur has some lovely single colleagues. I closed my eyes. I'm not going to the wedding to network, Mom. Of course not, she said quickly, defensively. It's just, you'll be alone. And all the photos, it'll look, she trailed off. It'll look like you're alone because you're unlovable. The months blurred. I worked, I gymmed, I cooked solo meals. I spoke to my family in weekly, dutiful calls. The conversation was a script. Celia's wedding plans, the cake tasting, the floral mock-ups, the band audition, Dad's golf game, Mom's charity committee. My life was summarized in 2 safe words. Works fine. They never asked for details. It was a dance we perfected. I was the background actor in the epic drama of Celia's life. My silence was my concession, my price for a fragile, conditional peace. The flight was as uncomfortable as predicted. First class felt like a betrayal of my own ethos. The champagne sat untouched. I landed in my hometown, the air thick with humidity and memory. The Marriott was a palace of beige and chrome. My suite was larger than my apartment. A fruit basket from my parents sat on the table, a note in Mom's looping script. So glad you're here. Rehearsal dinner at 7 at the Grove. Car will pick you up at 6:30. Love, Mom and Dad. Instructions. Always instructions. The car was a Blacktown car. The driver nodded silently. We glided through streets I hadn't seen in years. The Grove was a restaurant hidden in, well, a grove of ancient oaks. Fairy lights twinkled. I could hear the murmur of expensive laughter before I even reached the door. I took a deep breath, adjusting my jacket. Navy, not black, a subtle rebellion. I pushed the door open. The scene was a tableau of effortless wealth. And there, at the center, was my family. Mom saw me first. Her eyes lit up, but it was the light of a stage manager seeing a problematic prop finally arrive. She floated over, air-kissing my cheek. Benjamin, you made it. Your suit is different. Dad followed with a firm, brief handshake. Son, good to see you. His gaze was already sliding past me, back to Arthur's father, a man who spoke in bonds and portfolios. And then, Celia. She was radiant in a pale pink sheath dress. She squealed, running to hug me. Ben, you came. The hug was tight, perfumed, and felt like a performance for the room. Let me look at you, she said, holding me at arm's length. Her smile faltered for a microsecond. You've lost weight. Are you eating? The public concern. I smiled, the tight one I practiced. I'm fine. You look amazing. And she did. She was made for this. Arthur joined us, clapping me on the back too hard. Ben, ready to be a brother-in-law. His grin was a white, even wall. Thrilled, I said. The word tasted like ash. I was ushered to a table, seated between a distant aunt and Arthur's cousin, a venture capitalist who asked what I did. Dinner was a 7-course ordeal. Speeches began. Arthur's best man told generic, charming stories. Then Dad stood up, tapping his glass. My heart sank. As father of the bride, he began, voice cracking with faux emotion. I have so many memories of my little girl. He spoke of her brilliance, her grace, her kindness. 10 minutes of pure Celia. Not a single mention of me. Not of my children. Not of our family. I was a ghost. I stared at my plate, at the smear of reduction sauce, focusing on the pattern. The applause was deafening. Mom was crying dainty tears. Celia was beaming, holding Arthur's hand. I felt a nudge. It was Arthur's cousin. Must be tough, he said, not unkindly. Living up to that. I looked at him. He shrugged. I have a sister like that. It's like they're made of light. The rest of us are just shadow. I was so startled by his insight I just nodded. He raised his glass to me. To the shadows. I clinked mine against his, the crystal ringing a sharp, clear note in the cacophony of celebration. The night ended with promises of a big day tomorrow. I fled to the town car. Back at the hotel, I stripped off the suit and stood under a scalding shower. I replayed the silence during Dad's speech. The utter erasure. It wasn't an oversight. Oversights are accidental. This was a deletion. I was a footnote they'd chosen to omit from the main text. I climbed into the enormous bed, feeling smaller than I had in years. The quiet of the hotel room was different now. It wasn't peaceful. It was lonely. The wedding day dawned bright and obscenely cheerful. My phone buzzed at 8 a.m. A group text from Mom. Girls at the spa? Boys, Arthur has a tea time at 10. Meet at the clubhouse. I had no intention of playing golf. I texted back, have fun. Need to handle some work emails. 3 dots appeared immediately. Mom, on your sister's wedding day? The guilt. The constant, low-grade guilt. I didn't respond. I ordered room service and ate pancakes in my boxers, staring at the muted financial news on TV. A small, sad rebellion. By 3 p.m., it was time to armor up. The suit felt heavier now. The tie was a noose. I took a rideshare to the Arboretum, avoiding the family shuttle. The ceremony was in the Rose Garden. Hundreds of white chairs faced a floral arch. It was breathtaking, and it made my soul tired. I was directed to the second row, left side. Family. I sat, watching well-heeled guests filter in. My parents appeared from a side door. Mom was a vision in taupe silk. Dad looked proud and uncomfortable in his morning coat. They didn't see me at first. Then Mom did. She hurried over, her smile strained. "You're here. Good. We need you for family photos before it starts. Come." It was a command. I followed her behind the arch to a secluded lawn. Celia stood there, a vision in lace, surrounded by bridesmaids. Her eyes found mine. "Ben, get over here." The photographer, a harried man with 3 cameras, positioned us. Parents in the middle, bride with parents, groom's family on the other side in 5. We shuffled. Mom, Dad, Celia. I stood slightly apart. "Okay, now just the immediate family," the photographer called. I stepped forward. Mom frowned. No, just us with Celia." She meant her, Dad, and Celia. I froze. The bridesmaids went quiet. Dad looked at his shoes. Celia giggled nervously. "Mom, Ben too." Mom waved a hand. "We'll get one with Ben later. This is for the official album." The classic parent-daughter shots. The words hung in the fragrant air. "You are not part of the classic picture." The photographer, sensing drama, snapped a few quickly. "Okay, great. Groom's family." I took a step back, then another. No one stopped me. No one called my name. I turned and walked away, past the staring bridesmaids, behind a tall hedge. I leaned against it, the rough bark digging into my palms. I focused on breathing. In, out. The sound of laughter from the photo session was a sharp, serrated knife. That moment, under the guise of efficiency of classic shots, was the truth of my place. I was not immediate. I was an addendum. The stone of anger in my gut was now molten, spreading through my veins. The processional music began. I had to go back. I smoothed my jacket, fixed my face into neutral blankness, and returned to my seat. No one noticed my absence. The ceremony was a beautiful blur. Celia glided. Arthur wept. Vows were exchanged. They kissed. The crowd erupted. I stood. I clapped, my hands making sound without feeling. As the new couple walked back up the aisle, Celia caught my eye. She smiled, a genuine, happy smile. In that second, I didn't hate her. I pitied her. She didn't even know what had just happened. The blindness of the sun. The reception was in a giant, clear-top tent lit by 1,000 candles. I found my seat at table 12, the miscellaneous family and friends table. My dinner companions were pleasant, asking polite questions. I deflected. I drank 2 glasses of champagne quickly. The toasts began. More praise for Celia, for Arthur, for the Thorns. Then my father stood again. My body went rigid. "As I said last night," he chuckled, "my daughter is my greatest achievement." A collective ah swept the room. He continued, "Watching her today, I knew every sacrifice was worth it." Sacrifice. The word echoed. The private school tuition, the horse riding lessons, the college donations. The silence required of me. The bending of my interests, my personality, to accommodate her light. My greatest achievement. He sat down to thunderous applause. I stared at him. He was looking at Celia, his eyes shining. Mom was clutching his arm, nodding. A switch flipped inside me. It wasn't anger anymore. It was clarity. A cold, pure, and devastating clarity. I stood up. My chair scraped loudly on the wooden floor. A few people at nearby tables looked over. I didn't walk toward the dance floor or the exit. I walked toward the head table. My steps were measured on the grass. I saw Mom's eyes widen in confusion, then alarm. Dad looked puzzled. Celia's happy smile became fixed. I reached the front. I didn't touch the microphone. I just turned to face the room. The band, sensing something, trailed off. A hush fell, punctuated by the clink of a glass somewhere. 300 people looked at me. My heart was a hammer, but my voice, when it came, was steady. "I'd like to propose a toast," I said. The room relaxed slightly. A brother's toast. How charming. Mom's shoulders dropped an inch. I've listened to so many beautiful words about my sister, Celia. And they're all true. She is brilliant, and kind, and radiant. I paused, looking directly at my parents. And she is my parents' greatest achievement. The air grew thick. It's important to name an achievement. To acknowledge the cost. Because an achievement requires effort, sacrifice, and focus. A relentless, singular focus. Dad's face was turning pale. I learned the meaning of focus young. I continued, my gaze sweeping the now silent crowd. I learned that in some families, love isn't a blanket. It's a spotlight. And it only shines on one. A gasp from somewhere. Celia whispered. Ben, please. I didn't look at her. Today, during photos, I was reminded I'm not part of the immediate family picture. And my father's toast reminded me why. You can't have two greatest achievements. One inevitably becomes I search for Arthur's cousin's word. The shadow. Tears were streaming down Mom's face now, but they were tears of fury, of humiliation. Dad stood up. That's enough, Benjamin. The use of my full name. Is it? I asked, finally looking at him. Because for 28 years, it hasn't been enough. My silence hasn't been enough. My shrinking hasn't been enough. So today, I'm opting out of the silence. I turned back to the room, to the stunned, captivated faces. So here's my toast. To Celia and Arthur. May you build a different kind of family. And to self-respect, however long it takes to find it. I picked up a full glass of champagne from the head table, raised it, and drank. The silence was absolute. Then I set the glass down, turned, and walked out of the tent. I didn't run. I walked past the tables, through the gap in the hedges, and onto the gravel path. The noise erupted behind me. Shocked chatter, my mother's sob, Celia's cry. I kept walking. The night air was cool on my face. I felt empty, scoured out. And for the first time in my life, I felt free. I called a rideshare from the Arboretum gates. My phone began to vibrate incessantly in my pocket. I didn't look. The car arrived. Where to? The driver asked. The Marriott, please. As we drove, I turned my phone off. The world outside the window was dark and calm. I replayed what I'd done. There was no triumph, only a deep, resonant certainty. I had broken the unspoken rule. Thou shalt not disturb the narrative. I had made a scene. I had been inconvenient. I had been real. At the hotel, I packed my bag in 10 minutes. I left the suit in a heap on the floor. I changed into jeans and a t-shirt. I went downstairs, checked out, and asked the concierge for the nearest airport hotel. I took a taxi there, a generic, clean chain by the terminal. I checked in under my own name. Only then, in this anonymous room, did I turn my phone on. The explosion was predictable. 47 missed calls. 112 text messages. I didn't read them. I sent one group text to Mom, Dad, and Celia. My text was simple. I am safe. I will not be reading any messages or taking any calls for a while. What I said needed to be said. I am not sorry for saying it. I am sorry it had to be said at your wedding, Celia. That was the only part that was wrong. I have flown home. Do not contact me. I blocked all 3 numbers. Then I blocked them on email, on social media. The digital severance was a click. The emotional one would take longer, but the first cut was made. The flight home was a blur of exhaustion. I slept like the dead. When I unlocked my apartment door, the familiar silence welcomed me. It wasn't lonely anymore. It was mine. I made tea. I sat at my desk. The invitation was still on the counter, a relic from a past life. I put it in the recycling. The next days were strange. The world hadn't ended. The sun rose. I worked. I ate. The absence of the weekly guilt call was a palpable relief. The first crack in my armor was healing from the inside. A week later, my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I looked through the peephole. It was my father. He stood alone, looking old and out of place in his polo shirt and khakis on my bohemian apartment landing. My heart thudded. I considered not answering. But this was the man who taught me to face things. Ironic. I opened the door. We stared at each other. Can I come in? He asked, his voice rough. I stepped aside. He walked in, looking around at my prints, my plants, my life, as if seeing it for the first time. Your mother is devastated, he began, standing awkwardly in the middle of the living room. Celia is hurt. The Thorns are well. I leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed. And you? I asked. He flinched. I don't know what I am, Ben. He used my nickname. First. What you did, it was the truth. I finished for him. He nodded slowly, not meeting my eyes. The photos, your mother, she just wanted the standard shots. She didn't mean. She did mean, I said softly. And so did you. Every time. He sank onto my sofa, a defeated heap. I don't know how to talk to you, he admitted. You were always so quiet. So separate. Celia was just easier. She wanted what we wanted. And I didn't, I said. It wasn't a question. No, he whispered. You were this mystery. We didn't know what to do with you. So we focused on what we understood. The confession hung in the air. It was pathetic. It was human. My anger softened. not into forgiveness, but into a kind of bleak understanding. Why are you here, Dad? He looked up, his eyes wet. I lost a son a long time ago. I think. I just realized it. In that tent, watching you walk away. I saw you for the first time in years. And you were walking out of my life. He cried then, silent, shoulder-shaking sobs. A man who'd achieved everything, crumbling on my second-hand couch. I didn't go to comfort him. I let him cry. His grief was his own. For the first time, I wasn't responsible for managing a family emotion. When he quieted, he wiped his face with his hands. I don't expect anything, Ben. I have no right. But I wanted to say, I heard you. What you said about the spotlight. It's true. And I'm so sorry. The words were foreign, rusty. I'd never heard him apologize for anything more significant than burnt toast. I nodded. Thank you for saying that. Is there a way back? He asked, hope a fragile thread in his voice. I thought for a long time. Not to what was. That's gone. Maybe to something new. But it can't be on the old terms. He nodded, absorbing the finality. Your mother, she may never come around. This has shattered her worldview. I know, I said. That's her journey. He stood, looking at me with a new, painful respect. You're stronger than I knew. I had to be, I said. He left shortly after, with no promises, no plans. Just a sad, quiet acknowledgement of the wreckage. I watched his rental car pull away. I felt no joy, no closure. Just a deep, weary sadness for the years wasted in the shadow. The following months were a journey into a new quiet. I didn't unblock my family. I started seeing my therapist again. We processed the wedding incident, as I called it. She called it an act of profound self-respect. I began to reclaim parts of myself I'd buried. I joined a hiking group. I volunteered at an animal shelter. I dated Sarah from the coffee shop. It was slow, simple, based on mutual interest, not on filling a void. My work flourished. The pain was still there, a phantom limb, but it was no longer consuming. 6 months after the wedding, I received a letter. Actual paper, in an envelope. The return address was Celia's new marital home. My hands shook as I opened it. It was not a long letter. Her handwriting was neat, controlled. Ben, I'm not writing to yell or to blame. I've had a lot of therapy since the wedding. Arthur insisted. I'm trying to understand. I've been replaying my whole life, looking for the shadows. I was so busy basking in the light, I never thought about what it was costing you, or that there was a cost at all. The photo thing. Mom orchestrated it, but I allowed it. I didn't speak up. I was so worried about timeline, about my dress, about my smile. I didn't see my brother being erased. I am so sorry for that moment, and for a lifetime of moments I was too self-absorbed to see. I don't know if we can have a relationship. The trust is broken. But I want you to know, I see you now. Not as a supporting character in my story, but as a person with his own. Maybe that's a start. Celia. I read it 5 times. There was no demand, no manipulation. Just an acknowledgement. It was more than I'd ever expected from her. I didn't reply immediately. I sat with it for weeks. The letter lived on my desk. Some days it made me angry. Some days it made me sad. Finally, I wrote back. Short, careful. Celia, thank you for the letter. I'm glad you're in therapy. I am too. Seeing is the first step. I need space and time. I don't know what a future relationship looks like, but I appreciate the apology. Ben, it was a fence, not a bridge, but it was honest. A year passed. I heard from Dad occasionally, brief, awkward emails about neutral topics. A baseball article he thought I'd like, a book recommendation. I replied in kind. It was a slow, cautious dance. Mom was radio silence. According to Dad, she told her friends her son was going through a phase and needs space. The narrative persisted, just with me offstage. I was okay with that. My life was full in its quiet way. Sarah and I grew closer. I met her family. Loud, messy, loving. They argued over dinner. They laughed too loud. They remembered each other's stories. They asked me questions and listened to the answers. It was overwhelming and beautiful. Sarah's mom once hugged me and said, "It's good to have you here, Ben." It wasn't performative. It was just kind. I cried in the car on the way home. Sarah held my hand. "It's okay to miss what you never had," she said softly. That was it exactly. I was mourning the family I'd been born into, while learning to accept the love of the one I was building. Another year marker approached, the wedding anniversary. My own private, terrible holiday. I felt the old dread creep in. Sarah planned a weekend getaway to a cabin in the woods, no cell service. "We're making a new memory," she declared. That weekend, as we hiked and cooked and talked, I realized the sharp edges of the pain had dulled. It was now a bruise, tender to the touch, but not debilitating. I was healing. The silence I now lived in was chosen, not imposed. It was the difference between being silenced and being at peace. Then, a surprise. An email from Dad with the subject, a request, not a demand. He wrote that Mom had finally agreed to see a new therapist, a specialist in family systems. That she was, for the first time, talking about her own childhood of impossible expectations. "She's not ready to talk to you," Dad wrote. "But she's talking about you. As a person she hurt, not as a problem she managed. It's progress." I wrote back, "I'm glad for her. And for you." It was all I could offer. Their journey was theirs. Mine was finally my own. Life continued. Sarah and I got a dog, a scruffy terrier mix we named Hugo. He was chaos on 4 legs, and he adored me unconditionally. My business grew. I hired a junior designer. I mentored her, making a conscious effort to acknowledge her work, to see her. One day, Celia's name popped up on my phone, a new number. A text, "Thinking of you today. It's Mom's 60th. Feels strange. Hope you're well." I stared at it. It was a neutral olive branch. I replied after an hour, "Thank you. Hope the day is peaceful for you." It was a civil, distant exchange. But it wasn't hostile. The ice wasn't breaking. It was slowly thinning. I focused on the life in front of me. The joy of a successful client presentation. The simple pleasure of Saturday morning pancakes with Sarah. Hugo's enthusiastic greeting every time I came home. This was my achievement. Not a trophy on a shelf, but a warmth in my chest. A sense of belonging in my own skin. The shadow was stepping into a light of its own making, and it was gentle, it was kind. 2 years after the wedding, I received a package. No return address. Inside was a small, carefully wrapped box and a note from Dad. "Found this going through the attic. Thought you should have it." I unwrapped the box. Inside was my old sketchbook from high school. I'd forgotten about it. I used to draw elaborate comic book characters, strange cityscapes. I flipped through the pages, my throat tight. On the last page, in my teenage scrawl, was a note. "Someday I'll get out of here and make real things." He'd seen it. He'd kept it. I cried. For the boy who felt so trapped. For the man who'd finally escaped. I texted Dad, "Thank you for the sketchbook. It means more than you know." He replied, "You were always making real things." I was too blind to see. That exchange felt like a tiny, significant suture on a deep wound. It didn't heal it, but it pulled the edges closer. I put the sketchbook on my shelf, next to the photo Dad had sent later of Celia and me on the beach. My history was being returned to me, piece by piece. Sarah and I got engaged. It wasn't a grand proposal. We were on our couch, Hugo between us. I just said, "I can't imagine my life without you in it. Will you marry me?" She said yes. We decided on a small wedding, just close friends and her family. I debated telling my family. The old programming whispered, "It's a family event, they should know." But this was my family event. I decided to tell them, but not invite them. It was a boundary, clear and firm. I emailed Dad, Celia, and even Mom's old address. The email was straightforward. "Sarah and I are engaged. We are planning a small, private ceremony later this year. I wanted you to hear it from me. I am happy, and I am at peace. I am not extending invitations, as we are keeping it very small. I wish you all well." The replies were telling. "Dad, congratulations, Ben. She's wonderful. Wishing you every happiness." Celia, "Wow, Ben. Congratulations to you both. Truly happy for you." Mom, no reply. But an hour later, a text from Dad. "Your mother says congratulations. She means it." It was something. It was acknowledgement without intrusion. We planned our wedding in 3 months. It was in a public garden, with a taco truck and a local folk band. Sarah's family decorated with paper lanterns. There were no photographers, just friends snapping pics. I wore a simple linen suit. I felt present, whole. As we said our vows, I looked at Sarah and saw a future built on seeing each other, truly seeing. There was no shadow at this wedding. Just 2 people, choosing each other in the full light of day. After our wedding, I felt a shift. The need to defend my space lessened. The fortress I'd built around my heart had a gate now, one I controlled. I decided to unblock my family's numbers. Not to initiate contact, but to remove the symbolic barrier. The first message that came through, weeks later, was from Celia. A photo of a positive pregnancy test. The text, "I know this is out of the blue. I'm scared and excited. I wanted you to know." No pressure to reply. I stared at the image. My sister was going to be a mother. The news stirred something complex in me. A strange, protective instinct for this unborn niece or nephew. The cycle could continue, or it could be different. I waited a day, then replied, "Congratulations, Celia. That's big news. I hope you have a healthy pregnancy." She wrote back immediately, "Thank you, Ben. That means a lot. Arthur says hi." It was a new chapter for her, one where she wasn't the sole star. Maybe motherhood would humble her, broaden her perspective. I hoped so, for that child's sake. My father began calling occasionally, never often, never demanding. We'd talk for 10 minutes about nothing important. It was stilted but earnest. One day, he said, "I'm proud of you, you know. The life you've built." I was silent for so long, he said, "Ben?" "I'm here," I said, my voice thick. "Thank you, Dad." It was the first time he'd ever said those words directly to me. They didn't fix the past, but they laid a brick for a possible future. A future where I was seen, not as a comparison, but as myself. Mom remained the silent void. According to Dad, her therapy was brutal. She was confronting her own mother's conditional love, the source of her need for a perfect facade. She'd built her identity on Celia's pedestal, and my rebellion had toppled it entirely. I could understand it intellectually. Emotionally, there was still a wide, empty space where a mother's love should have been. I made my peace with that emptiness. I filled it with other things, my work, my marriage, my friendships. It was okay for some wounds to leave a scar. Celia gave birth to a girl named Eleanor. She sent a photo. The baby was beautiful, a tiny, wrinkled thing with a fierce little frown. I sent a small, tasteful gift, a children's book about art, inscribed with her name. A card from Celia arrived later. "Eleanor loves the book. We read it every night. Thank you for thinking of her. Mom held her last week. She cried the whole time. It's complicated. Anyway, thank you. Love, C." The love, C was new. Not Celia, not just a signature. A tentative offering of closeness. Time, the great leveler, kept moving. Hugo grew a gray muzzle. My business thrived. Sarah and I bought a house with a yard. It needed work, and we loved every messy, DIY minute of it. We were a team. One fall afternoon, raking leaves, my phone rang. It was my father. His voice was strained. "Ben, it's your mother. She's had a kind of breakdown. The therapist says she's finally hit rock bottom. She's asking if she could see you. She says she has something to say." The leaves crunched under my feet. "I don't know, Dad. I'm not asking you to say yes," he said quickly. "I'm just relaying the request. Her therapist will be there. It would be at the therapist's office. A safe, controlled environment. No pressure. Just think about it." I talked to Sarah that night. "What do you want?" she asked. "Closure." "I don't know if closure exists," I said. "But maybe I want her to see me. The real me. In a room where she can't look away." Sarah nodded. "Then do it. But with your shield up." I agreed to the meeting. The therapist's office was neutral, calm. I arrived first with Sarah, who waited in the lobby. My parents arrived with their therapist, Dr. Evans. Mom looked frail, smaller. Her eyes were red-rimmed. We sat in a circle. The silence was heavy. Dr. Evans began. "Thank you for coming, Ben. This is a space for truth. Margaret, you asked for this meeting." Mom looked at her hands, then at me. Her voice was a rasp. "Benjamin, for most of your life, I saw you as a reflection of me. A flawed one." She took a shuddering breath. "Your quiet wasn't peace. It was an accusation I couldn't face. So I tried to fix you, or hide you, or wish you into something else. The day of the photos, I was erasing the flaw. I know that now. I have spent years mourning the son I thought I wanted, while blinding myself to the son I had." She was crying openly now, not pretty tears, but ugly, gut-wrenching sobs. "I was a terrible mother to you. I don't ask for forgiveness. I just need you to know. I see the damage. I am the damage." Her raw honesty was disarming. This wasn't the curated matriarch. This was a broken woman. "I love you," she whispered. "I think I always did, but it was a poisoned love, filtered through my own sickness. I am so sorry. For every missed birthday emotion, every compared report card, every time I made you feel like a guest in your own family." Dad was crying too, holding her hand. I sat, absorbing the words. They were the words I'd waited a lifetime to hear. And now that they were here, I felt quiet. Not the old silence. A new stillness. Thank you for saying that, Mom. I said finally, my own voice rough. I heard you. It was all I could give. I didn't absolve her. I didn't run to hug her. I acknowledged her truth. Dr. Evans spoke. This is a beginning, not an end. The session ended soon after. As we stood to leave, Mom looked at me, her eyes desperate. Could there ever be a place for me? Even a small one. I thought of my house, my wife, my life. Maybe, I said, but it will be small, and on my terms, and it will never be what it was. She nodded, a flicker of hope amidst the devastation. I'll take small. I'll take anything. We didn't hug. We just left. In the car with Sarah, I was quiet. You okay? She asked. I think so, I said. It's like, I've been holding a heavy box for 30 years. And someone just finally came and took the weight. My arms are still up, waiting. It'll take time to relax. Sarah took my hand. We have time. And we did. For the first time, I felt like I had all the time in the world. The relationship that developed with my parents was minimal, but real. They visited once, for a carefully orchestrated afternoon. Mom admired our garden. Dad helped me fix a fence post. It was awkward, but not hostile. They treated Sarah with genuine warmth. They didn't overstay. Celia and I texted occasionally, mostly about Eleanor, who was growing like a weed. She sent videos of Eleanor's first steps. I felt a distant, quiet fondness. I was an uncle in name only, but it was a title without baggage. It was enough. 5 years after the wedding that wasn't mine, our lives had settled into new patterns. Hugo passed away peacefully in his sleep. We grieved him deeply. My father had a minor heart scare, which shook him. He called me from the hospital, his voice scared. I just wanted to hear your voice, he admitted. I went to visit him. It was the first time I'd been back to my hometown since the wedding. Driving through the streets felt like visiting a museum of a life I no longer lived. I felt detached, a tourist in my own past. Dad recovered. The scare softened him further. He started sending me articles about design, about psychology, things he thought I'd find interesting. He was trying to learn my language. Mom sent a birthday card every year with a simple, heartfelt message. No guilt, no demands. Just thinking of you on your day. Love, Mom. I saved them in a drawer. They were artifacts of a war that had ended, not with a treaty, but with a slow, mutual retreat from the battlefield. Sarah and I talked about kids. We decided to try. The process brought up old fears for me. Fears of repeating patterns, of unseen shadows. We went to couples therapy to navigate it. I was determined to break the cycle, not with a dramatic speech, but with daily, conscious choice. When Sarah got pregnant, my first feeling was joy. My second was a fierce, protective vow. This child would never question their place in the light. Their light would be their own, not borrowed, not reflected. Our son, Leo, was born on a bright spring morning. Holding him, the world narrowed to his tiny, perfect face. The love was instant, overwhelming, and utterly free of conditions. I called my parents. They cried. They asked permission to visit. They came, bearing simple gifts. Mom held Leo with a reverence that seemed tinged with grief, for what she'd missed with me, perhaps. She looked at me over his head. You're going to be a wonderful father, she said. It was the greatest compliment she'd ever given me. Watching my parents with Leo was surreal. They were gentle, present, careful. They followed our lead. It was as if they were getting a second chance, and they were determined not to fail. I felt a strange sense of peace. The past wasn't forgiven, but it was no longer a chain. It was a story I had survived, a lesson I would use. Celia visited with Eleanor, who was now a spirited 5-year-old. The two cousins played on the floor, oblivious to the history that hovered in the room. One evening, after everyone had left, Sarah found me staring at Leo as he slept. A penny for your thoughts, she said. I pulled her close. I was just thinking, for so long, I defined myself by their silence. By what I wasn't. Now, I'm defined by this. I gestured to Leo, to her, to our home. By what I am. A husband. A father. A man who built something real. She kissed me. You always were that man. You just needed the space to become him. The final piece came unexpectedly. I was cleaning out the attic of our new house when I found the box with my wedding suit, the one I'd left on the hotel floor. My mother had retrieved it, had it cleaned, and sent it to me years ago. I'd shoved it away unopened. Now I took it out. It still smelled faintly of dry cleaning chemicals. I held it up. It was just a suit. A symbol of a day that broke me open. I didn't need it anymore. I decided to donate it. As I was folding it, my fingers brushed something in the inner breast pocket. A small, folded square of paper. I pulled it out. It was a note, in my mother's handwriting, from the day after the wedding. It must have been put there before she sent it. Benjamin, I don't know if you'll ever find this. I am writing this through a haze of shame and confusion. You were right. About everything. I am so lost. I hope, one day, you can find a way to be found. I love you. Mom. I sat on the attic floor, the note in my hand. This was her raw, unmediated truth, hidden away, just like I had been. She had been lost too, trapped in her own gilded cage. The symmetry was heartbreaking. I didn't feel anger. I felt a profound sadness for both of us, for the years we spent speaking different languages, living in parallel prisons. I put the note in my wallet, not as a burden, but as a reminder. A reminder that everyone has their hidden pockets of pain, their silent apologies written too late. Life moved forward in its gentle, ordinary way. Leo took his first steps, said his first words, Hugo, for the dog we'd loved. My parents were occasional, grateful visitors. Celia and I were friendly, if not deeply close. The spotlight of the family had diffused. There was no golden child anymore. There were just people, flawed and trying, connected by fragile, carefully tended threads. The silence that once ruled our family had been replaced by something more honest, distance, respect, and occasionally, quiet understanding. On the 10th anniversary of the wedding, I took a walk alone. I went to a quiet park and sat on a bench. I thought about the young man I was, simmering in silence, and the man I had become. The betrayal had been real. The pain had been deep, but it had also been the catalyst. It forced me to choose myself, to demand visibility, to learn that self-respect isn't something you're given. It's something you build, brick by brick, in the quiet spaces you claim for yourself. My phone buzzed. A text from the family group chat, a new one, with just Dad, Celia, and me. Dad had sent a photo of Mom holding Leo and Eleanor, a genuine smile on her face. Celia had written, "Look at Grandma go." I smiled. It was a simple moment, unburdened by history. I typed back, "A good picture." It wasn't perfect. It wasn't a fairy tale, but it was real. And in its own complicated, hard-won way, it was enough. The silent brother had finally found his voice, and in doing so, had taught everyone how to listen. I got up from the bench and started walking home. The sun was warm on my back. The path was clear ahead. I thought of Leo, of Sarah, of the life we were building, a life with noise and argument and laughter and love that was spoken, not assumed. The silence was behind me now, a place I had visited, a territory I had survived. I was no longer defined by what was missing. I was defined by what was present. And for the first time, in the quiet of my own heart, I was finally, completely, at peace.